special edition of Pop Jedi. I'm, of course, Rob DiLauro, and with me, as always, is Miss Sith Jade. Sith, what's going on?
Hi, guys. Excited to be here.
And, of course, Di Marie. Di, what's going on?
Hi, guys. I'm glad to be back.
So we're going to get into a bit of news in terms of our adventure, as a brand. Real quick, I just want to, first off, they've spent, a much shorter time, especially, working with this show. I've worked with Horror Web for probably almost for 2 years with another show. And I decided to make a move that would put us, deeper and further into the realm of popular culture where we're actually, I wouldn't necessarily call the word appreciated, but, it just felt like a better fit. But honestly, when it comes to, to the people at Horror Web, they are like family to me. It was a hard decision, but it was a decision that I made, clearly, for the fact that, I have to do what's good for us as Pop Jedi. But I want to thank them so much for their kindness and their loyalty and their, technical know-how. As small of a ragtag group as they are in Austin, Texas, they're going to do some really amazing things. And I was so happy to be part of their crew, of their family. But I also want to thank Nathan Best and the team at Comic Book Movie, who in a very short time, saw what they saw, and after one conversation believed in what we had and was like, we're looking for content, and what you guys have is really awesome. And it is definitely it's a bigger arena, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
If we were in a boxing ring, and we've moved to the Gladiator Arena right now. There's 80,000 people on YouTube, on their YouTube channel that we're not familiar with. This is all brand new to us.
Yeah.
So we're just going to do what we can to continue to bring the heat and, build this community that we're trying to build, when it comes to popular culture and, things that people love. If you guys aren't familiar, because, we are new to, some of you, we are a weekly popular culture show, and we focus on all of the news, basically the most important news. And then we focus on topics that, are a little more hot button, things we can actually talk about, that's not just casting, not just, some sort of comic book announcement or whatever. Of course, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe on Disney Plus, there's a lot to talk about. And, of course, with our topic tonight, which is probably the biggest conversation that people are having right now, obviously, which is
Snyder Cut. I'm so excited. It was so good. I was blown away.
So we are going to be talking about the Snyder Cut. Obviously, it is a 4-hour opus, so we won't be able to talk about everything that we want to talk about. Yeah. I don't know. It seems a little overblown at this point. I think people kind of know where it came from, what happened to it, and all this other stuff. So there's really not too much to get into in terms of that. So we really just want to get, our hooks into the meat of this, particular venture that we now have. It's part of our lexicon, and it's exciting because not only from a standpoint of being a DC fan and seeing a movie, how it's meant to be made, it really says something in regard to how streaming services treat filmmakers, because even if you didn't like this movie, there's one thing that you can appreciate, I think personally, is that Zack had an opportunity to finish what he started the way that he wanted. And there's not a lot of people that get that chance.
Yeah.
So, it really has a lot to do with not even just justification. I don't think there's any redemption, when it comes to Zack Snyder. I mean, look, Justice League, even though, it was a Frankenstein, thatched mess, it, people call it a failure, but it made like $600 million at the box office.
It still performed well, for sure.
It's supposed to make in regards to the $1 billion that Marvel usually makes when they put out movies and stuff. So it's not a complete and utter failure. It's not like it, like they made like $2, like it made $600 million. The Snyder Cut, the thing that I love about it the most is that Zack is a very divisive filmmaker. I think there's a lot of people that don't like how flashy he is, when it comes to his vision, when it comes to building a story that feels more artistic on a level of how it looks as opposed to the actual story itself.
Yeah.
I don't think people think he's a very strong storyteller, but I do think that out of all the people out there that are working on superhero films and things of that nature, Zack probably knows these stories better than anybody else.
For sure.
Because you can see the love that he has within the story, even though it's not giving you like a ton of exposition like all the time and this and that, like you can tell that he really loves these characters. And especially when it comes to the Justice League, which is what we're talking about tonight, he sees them the way we saw them when we were kids. Like Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and all these heroes were the world's finest, and they were also gods. They're gods. You know what I mean? They're like larger than life. And I think he definitely has that vibe when it comes to the way he's telling their story. You know what I mean? I absolutely loved every minute of it. I'm a little bit biased, from the fact that, like I've been following Zack's journey. I believed in Zack's journey from the beginning. I love Man of Steel. I like Batman v Superman. After, maybe like the fifth watch or something, I really started to get what he was trying to, create.
Do with it. Yeah.
And a lot of people hate these movies for whatever reason. And there's a lot of people who love these movies too. But I feel like I've spoken enough about the exposition in regards to, like the story itself and Zack's ideas and whatnot. But you guys have seen the movie. What were your thoughts on it?
I loved it. I thought it was a beautiful film. I thought the score was amazing. It was placed perfectly where it was kind of lacking in the first Justice League.
Mhm.
As a horror or a major horror fan and a makeup artist, I really liked how they did the special effects of this film, particularly when the Mother Box did that kind of Resident Evil scene where it destroyed Cyborg's father. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that was really intense.
Yeah. But I just thought everything that they did with the film was beautiful, hands down.
Yeah. Sith, what are your thoughts on the Snyder Cut?
So I have mixed feelings about it. There were a couple of points in the movie where I wasn't completely sold on it, which is fine. But overall, I would say that it was really beautiful. Like Dave said, the visuals on it were just blew me out of the water. The costumes, I'm big into cosplay and costuming, so just seeing the details, whether it was actual costumes or CGI, it was all put together so well. But it wasn't overdone. It was just the right amount of flair, just the right amount of eye-catching, to where in every single scene, every single hero looked essentially like a god, which is what they're supposed to be.
Mhm.
So it was so beautiful.
I think the one thing that really surprised me the most when it comes to this story, and I think this is something we mentioned on past shows, but seeing this version the way it was, and the best way to put this 2017 version, it really is kind of like this Frankenstein's monster that just seems like things just kind of thatched together. You can tell there was definitely studio interference. You can also tell that Joss, when he stepped on after Zack sadly lost his daughter Autumn. You can see that he kind of took the reins and he wanted to do his own thing, for better or worse or whatever. But the one thing that really surprised me about the Snyder Cut was, like, I think I was more baffled than anything else that they took out the things that they took out.
Yeah.
There's a scene with Cyborg, if you recall. If you guys haven't seen the Snyder Cut yet, you probably shouldn't be watching this episode right now. So go watch the Snyder Cut if that's your jam, and then come back in
4 hours.
Yeah, come back in 4 hours and watch this video. But we're going to be spoiling this, this thing to death. that scene where Cyborg is learning, where his dad is actually, going through and saying like, that basically he's like a god of technology. You can control like nuclear weapons at a single thought and all these different things. He could basically do anything to just take over everything, but he would rather pinpoint a single mother and help her with her finances. And it's such a beautiful scene. Like I literally, I think I definitely, I teared up when I saw that scene because it was just such a beautiful moment. And, Ray Fisher wasn't really in the 2017 version at all. But the thing we'll get into the characters individually, I guess. But, Cyborg is such a cool character and has so much, weight to him. And we saw nothing when it came to the original version.
He's basically just a metal man, just lumbering around and just shooting his cannons when they needed him to. But he is very meaty as a character.
But the other thing that we also saw from this cut is that Ray Fisher is a phenomenal actor. Yes. And, just his movements, when he's doing the cyborg thing, he's like, doing the, like the best way to do it is like, kind of like this kind of like cybernetic, zombie walk or whatever, like where he's, you know what I mean? Like it's just beautiful. Everything that he brought to the table when it comes to that character just came across so well.
I'm glad he got more time because his acting, like you said, it was on point. Just even when he had that conversation with Diana, he's like, "Why are you looking for me?" Just that one line, the way he said it, it gave me chills instantly.
Yeah. Since we're talking about characters, Di, what was your favorite, like arc, from this particular cut?
So I love that we got to explore the Amazons and her backstory a little bit more. And I just appreciated that they explored every character arc more, because if you're watching this with a friend or somebody else that's never watched Justice League or anything like that, this version of the movie definitely explains a lot more about what's going on rather than the first one. Not that I'm trying to make a bad comparison, but I just like seeing more of the backstory with everybody that we're seeing.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned, like the Themyscirans, because, there's one thing that I noticed, it's probably been a while since you've seen the 2017 cut, but, not to get too much into that, into that muck and mire, but, we know the things that we know about Joss Whedon, allegedly. And, the one thing that I remember from the 2017 cut was that, the Themysciran part wasn't, first of all, like like it's very quick. You don't really necessarily know what's going on. And it's not very feminist. There was a lot of, upskirt shots that I remember that were a little like, whoa, okay.
Fan service.
That was a choice. It was almost like, whatever Joss was bringing to that equation was, I don't know. It was a little more eye candy for the boys, and that's not what the Themyscirans are.
They're powerful warrior women. Like they're meant
to be a woman.
Yeah, they're meant to be impressive. They're meant to be like ripped and massive and just terrifying. They're not meant to be overly feminine. Their outfits are slightly feminine, but they themselves are meant to be a force to be reckoned with.
Oh yeah, like that. One of the greatest lines from them was, when he comes up, when he finally steps out from the mother bot or the boom tube, and he goes, "I will bathe in your fear." And then, Connie Nielsen looks at him and he goes, "Daughters of Themyscira, show him your fear." And they all go, "We have no fear." Like,
yes,
come on.
That's what they are. It described it perfectly. Just that one little scene. That's who they are.
Mm-hmm. But then I saw people like, they were going, okay, so this, this mother box hasn't opened up for like 4,000 years. So they just happen to have a bunch of Themyscirans that's just sitting around, waiting for this thing to open up. Okay. All right. I'll accept that.
I like that they were prepared for it though. They were ready. Out of everybody, they were the ones that were like, no, this is gonna happen.
I don't mess around at all.
Listen, if you had to get together all the, all of, Earth's greatest and, like the gods and all these things like thousands of years ago, and you faced, Darkseid, AKA at this point, if you want to get comic book nerdy about it, his name's Uxas at this point. He doesn't necessarily have all the power and domination, you know what I mean? Like he's kind of more, I wouldn't say weaker, but, like he's got a lot to learn, during that history lesson. But they've seen the worst. They fought this force back. So why would you not, if you're already like in a military formation, when it comes to your lifestyle anyway, I guess you would have people on watch, to make sure this damn thing didn't open up. Yeah. Every minute that, you know what I mean? Like it would just make sense to me. You would just have, like.
That was one thing that bothered me about the boxes is when man took their box, they buried it in a shallow grave in the middle of a forest. No effort in hiding this thing. They're like, we're going to dig a hole. And they dug a hole and then they put it in the hole and then that was it. I'm like, what are you doing? You're going to just hide this super powerful thing just in the dirt? Come on now.
Oh, what was your favorite characterization out of the movie?
So I really liked Cyborg, honestly. And the thing is, I've never been a huge fan of him. I liked DC, but I'm not as in it as you are, as some of the fans are, which is funny because I was raised in a DC household and then I converted to Marvel. But his character, and just to seeing him in the hospital bed after the car accident, after losing his mom, it wrenched my heart. Like Zack did an amazing job pulling at the heartstrings with that, and just seeing him slowly just kind of come back to himself and realize that he's been given this gift, even if he doesn't view it as that, he's accepting it and going, okay, I've been given this is a huge deal. What can I do for people? So just seeing him evolve through that movie, it was so amazing.
Well, you know what? I'm going to kind of like, do some thatch work here when it comes to, my favorite characterizations. I think that there was a lot of, dare I say, redemptive qualities when it comes to the way Ben Affleck as Batman was portrayed, and Jason Momoa as Aquaman. He wasn't as, dude bro as they made him in the you know what I mean? They took a lot of that stuff out, and it seemed like he was more, I don't know, like there were some scenes where he's like, all right, my man, whatever. But like, a lot of those horrible jokes were taken out, and he seemed more sympathetic, like even, especially when, Cyborg's father dies. And, let's be real. Silas is probably one of the, greatest heroes of this movie. He took himself out because he knew his son was going to be the hero that he needed to be. That's incredible. That's incredible.
That's a lot of selflessness. A lot of selflessness.
And, like he obviously knew that, he was, like he was doing that thermal imaging to the mother box to, so they can actually like, that all made sense to me. I saw a lot of, people online. There's like, I guess the whole thing that they do in that lab is like just play with lasers. That's kind of like the thing. Like
that's pretty much what it looks like. They just have a bunch of laser cannons just everywhere doing different things. Lasers.
Honestly, my favorite, aside from Cyborg, and I'm a huge like Batfleck fan anyway. So like I love what they did with him, and obviously, like he was just trying to, like he was just trying to do the right thing. He was trying to bring people together, the right people to, to stop this horrible force. But the weakest link in the original cut was Barry Allen, the Flash. And for me, was probably the strongest. All his jokes landed where they didn't before. And, just, the relationship between his father was more, heartfelt, especially at the end, when he, gets a job at Star Labs and he goes, oh my God, he goes, you got your foot in the door. He goes, yeah, I got my foot in the door. Is that something, people say? And he's like, yeah, man, that's something people say, like,
that's something.
It's just like his arc was beautifully done. And, I didn't really think too much of Ezra Miller, and, like, I'm also a huge Stan fan, and I really didn't care what he did, with his rendition of Trash Can Man. But he was one of the strongest ones for me. I was really surprised, but they didn't get into like, why Barry Allen is important. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't get into the fact that, you know, like, if you're not watching the Flash TV show, which I'm not, you know, like, I don't watch that, you know, the CW stuff,
I do.
you know, but he can, you know, he can turn back the clock,
Mhm.
you know, change
Yeah, that's
the
a real
past,
big
change
thing
the future.
in the TV show.
And it was just, you know, like, all that was just really, you know, beautifully done. Okay, so let's get into the actual design work, because in 2017 we saw Steppenwolf,
Mhm.
and he honestly looked like, I don't know what, like something out of God of War, kind of like a
Yeah.
video game character. You know, kind of like this. I don't like a testicle, you know, shaped chin, and it just looked really weird. I love this design for Steppenwolf. Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, they
What-
did so much better with
Yeah.
it. I liked his outfit, his armor better, the way it kind of moved. It almost seemed like sentient, like it moved on its own with him and kind of protected him. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Really fluid.
You know, did you guys feel did you guys feel like, did you feel like he could be a sympathetic character in a way? I mean, look, I mean, he obviously deceived his master, right?
Yeah.
You know, who's, you know, he's technically, you know, like part of the bloodline. But this dude, like, literally has to, like, score 50,000 dominated planets.
That's a lot of planets. When he
Back in his good graces.
said that, I could not believe it. I'm like, that's a lot to rack
It's a
up.
lot
And
of
like,
work.
that's the time period too. I can't imagine Darkseid is too patient. You know, what's the time period he's got to work with?
No. What did you think of the Steppenwolf design, Di?
I thought it was beautiful. Like what Sith said, his armor was gorgeous. I really liked how we got to see more of the parademons, and it just made how terrifying they were way more effective, especially in the first scene where the temple.
We'll just call it the
Cave.
temple. I don't think it had a name. I
I
think
don't
it's
think so.
the Themyscira temple. Yeah.
Yeah, but when the temple falls in and all of the Amazons fall down and all of the parademons fall down, and then they just come right out unscathed, like that's terrifying. And then you get to see where they come from and just taking over towns. Like, oof, I wouldn't want to mess with that.
Let's talk about Darkseid, because you know, he's not really in the movie that much.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that he is he's probably a part of this entire movie. Like, he, you know, his presence looms large, is what I'm saying. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even when he's not on the screen, like,
Yeah,
you can
he's still
tell
there.
that this whole thing is, you know, for him. And, you know, Jim Starlin was the guy who created Thanos. But Jack King Kirby, actually created Darkseid. And, you know, I've seen, like, you know, a couple battles online and stuff, but, you know, I'm sorry, I hate to, you know, put it to you guys, but, you know, Darkseid did come before Thanos. Thanos was kind of like a carbon copy of Darkseid. So, you know, so Darkseid is the, you know, the one true, like, new god created by Jack Kirby. And, you know, I mean, honestly, like, I've seen, you know, I've personally read, like, a lot of Darkseid, you know, stuff, and it was wonderful to see him on the screen for the first time. It was just absolutely incredible.
I liked how we got to see him with the first battle when they were first fighting him, you know, when he came in and tried to take over the Earth before it was technically Earth. How he didn't look as impressive. Him as himself, he looked a little toned down, a little more like raw and kind of like caveman-y in his outfit. Then we jump to seeing him now where he's got the headpiece on and he's all just crumbly looking, and he was much more menacing, much more terrifying.
I've always loved the, you know, like, I think when you watch Batman v Superman, like, that nightmare scene doesn't necessarily make sense the first time. Because it's just kind of like this, like, thrown in, like, you know, this is Bruce's premonition, you know, and then all of a sudden, like, Barry comes from out of nowhere and says, Lois is the key. And people were watching that movie like years ago going, like, what the hell is going on? Like, what does that mean? But it all works so freaking well now. And I love that, just that whole nightmare thing even more. And like I said, we'll get into the end of that. But so is there any particular scenes that stood out for you guys in this 4 hours? Like just something that like just really just hit home and something that you'll never forget out of the whole experience.
I would say when they were all banding together, when he had finally gotten the last cube, and Cyborg just watched his dad die in a very traumatic way. He essentially just disintegrated in front of them, and just seeing the look on their faces that this is, obviously they knew it was happening, but this is the real moment where we really have to buckle down and come to terms with, we have to work together as a team. You could see it on their faces. You could feel it in the room as Cyborg is mourning and freaking out over his father just dying. They still all managed to stay together and not, disperse and separate. That kind of stood out for me. And like you said, with Aquaman, he was standing up for Cyborg endlessly. He was like, no, this is our fault, and we need to fix this. So
what about you, Di?
This is a little early, but I loved seeing Jared Leto as his role as Joker. I got goosebumps. But
yeah, we'll get into that for sure. So the nightmare sequence is what you're talking about. One of the strongest scenes for me that really had a lot of problems, for some reason or another, just, from the one thing I was really bummed out about, and I think this is actually Whedon's choice, but Flash in the original cut was talking about when they were resurrecting Superman, they were like, do you guys even watch movies? Like, this is like Pet Sematary. That joke was hilarious to me.
Yes.
And it was cut out, but for whatever reason, he just decided, this isn't mine, whatever. Just like he took out, that, Cyborg actually in the original cut says booyah at the end of the movie. And it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, this had more weight to it. It was, there were jokes, but they were correctly placed. It wasn't just like, we're going to throw them in as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. But I love when they resurrect Superman. That scene. Well, first of all, like, that was the one thing that, if you guys, haven't seen the cut and you're just, just watching this just to watch this, the one problem that people had the big problem that people had with the original cut was that Henry Cavill was getting ready to do Mission Impossible. Mm-hmm. And he had this like cookie duster mustache, and they decided to CG this thing out. So the whole time you're watching like his like face movements with a CG'd out mustache, and he just looked really weird.
It looked strange. It looked, you could tell it was CG and not in a good way. You're like, something is very wrong here.
Yeah. And, and it really was a shame because, that guy looks like an Adonis, man. When he like, oh yeah. just he looks like a god. He absolutely looks the part.
When Lois put a shirt on, I'm like, thank you. I love what we're doing here, but you need to give me a minute. Like, this is a lot of man, a lot of Superman. Okay.
Yeah. Just that scene, just the way it played out. Like, even, we were talking about the slow motion, like even the slow motion works. Mm-hmm. Especially when Barry's trying to run past him and like, he just kind of like knows that he's
oh my gosh, his eyes, Ezra's eyes, the one eye was bugging out, and he's like, this guy is seeing me in real time, not happy about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then he's trying to hit him, and he's like he's trying to block him, and like this dude's probably going like 50,000 miles per hour. He's going the speed of light, and that's how strong Superman is. He's just like hit, like every single time, you know what I mean? He's like ducking him. He's like
near misses. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, and then of course, like when Superman actually ducks him and Flash goes right into Aquaman. Oh, that was hilarious. And then he just kind of goes like,
coming for you.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of the fact that it was R-rated? Did you think that brought something to the table, or, because here's my feeling as a parent, like the 2017 cut was played on Cartoon Network like 3 weeks ago, not even. And it's very, it's very kiddie and works very well for kids. I think, like adding this, this layer to it, just makes it more of, dare I say, a film. You know what I mean? Like it feels like a film, and it feels like, even though we're watching people flying around and, using grappling hooks, and we're watching monsters, with axes and stuff, it doesn't feel childish at all. And it does, you know what I mean? Like it feels like, like a film for adults. Did you guys have that, have that vibe? Did you think that would, that they actually brought something to the equation, or?
Well, I don't think that an R-rated film necessarily means that's going to be better. Like when you see Birds of Prey, that movie was amazing, and it didn't get nearly enough credit that it deserved.
I just watched that today. I absolutely love Birds of Prey.
Yes. He's amazing. But I think that
you couldn't tell from the Harley Museum that I had in the back.
Oh, same. But I don't know. I just think that making it PG-13 kind of gives the writers and producers more room to focus more on the story than special effects and filling it with profanity and things like that, because parents don't want their kids to watch that. So it just makes it nicer for the whole family to watch it. And if kids are starting to get into it, they don't have to worry about being exposed to that kind of content just yet.
So let's talk about the final scene, because, the thing I love about this is, when we saw the 2017 cut, it was so quick. And literally to a point made absolutely no sense. And, you didn't get this feeling of, your heroes are basically banding together and doing this together, where this was, everybody was working together, and it was just so beautifully done. Especially that last moment where, of course, Superman, comes in and he goes, "Not impressed," and blast the axe, and just beats the ever-loving hell out of Steppenwolf. Burns off one of his horns.
Yeah, he went for gold on that one. He's like, "I'm not just going to injure you. We're gonna injure your pride a little bit too." Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the costume change too, how we went with the dark Superman colors. It kind of felt how that Kal-El was mourning the death of himself and coming back, because he's not the same Superman. Even though it's still him, he's different in a way. It felt like he was mourning the loss of his old self and coming into, what he needed to be now for the team and for the world. I loved that.
There's one thing that I did have a problem with, because, she was a very strong force in every one of the movies, but it seemed like Lois was kind of milquetoast in this one. It was a little bothersome to me, because you're seeing her in Man of Steel, and she's in the action the entire time, man. And this, she can't get over, Clark, of course, because she's absolutely in love with him, but she's going to his tomb, for lack of a better word, and giving the cops coffee and stuff. That's pretty much like her statement, her mission statement when it comes to the movie. Aside from just being the key or whatever, you know what I mean? When it comes to the whole nightmare situation that we're going to get into. But yeah, that was a problem for me, because Lois is a very strong woman. And, I just felt she was kind of underused a little bit. So let's talk about the nightmare sequence at the end, because this is something that Diana wants to talk about. Diana, actually, why don't you start us off on this? Because, actually, let me say this first. When we saw that scene, which was actually in the original cut, it was like a stinger for the original cut. When Joe Manganiello comes, on the boat as Slade Wilson Deathstroke, and you're seeing Jesse Eisenberg sitting there talking to him. I felt like a little redemption for Jesse.
Yes.
I honestly, I could see him, not that I hated him as Lex Luthor, he really, made some wild choices, when it came to the original, or the Batman v Superman, where he's kind of and doing that kind of shit. But, I felt like when he's sitting there as Lex Luthor, man, I could totally see him in that role. You know what I mean? And Joe Manganiello just looks awesome as Deathstroke, man. And I was really bummed out that, initially the way it was supposed to go down was that, Ben Affleck was going to play Batman in a solo film, and he was going to direct it, and, it just didn't go down that way. And I guess, because, everybody was just really kind of wounded from the fact that this was considered a failure, and that was something we mentioned in another show, but really hurt a lot of, well, I wouldn't necessarily say it hurt a lot of careers, but it did send Ben straight to the bottle. Like he was really, really hurt by the fact that, like it just didn't take the way he was expecting. So I will say this, before we get into the nightmare stuff, I'm just hoping that, all these actors are watching the reaction of this Snyder Cut, which I'm sure they are, and feeling some sort of like confidence, like feeling like, like this is something that they've wanted out for years.
Yeah.
Because they all secretly fought for it. They were all putting out, like secret Instagrams and stuff. And, like they wanted this version out. And, I'm just really hoping, not even just for the sake of the Snyderverse, but just, for their pride. Some really horrible stuff happened in their lives due to the fact that this movie just, was
I felt very bad for Ben Affleck. Like I thought he did amazing as Batman. I thought so far, he's done the best out of all of them, honestly. As trying to bring in that character. He was very realistic. He wasn't playful like how the other Bruces were. They had kind of like a little bit just like a nonchalant kind of air to them. Even when they were in the suit, he felt more serious and he felt more in it to me, kind of worn down and weathered.
I agree. I agree with that. I mean, like Ben Affleck, first of all, he's the build for Batman, Bruce Wayne. Absolutely 100%. And Batman is technically, like aside from, obviously the being the greatest detective and all that stuff, like when he punches you, like he is supposed to be like an absolute animal. And, like when Ben Affleck is like in that suit and he's breaking bones, like you believe it's every believable. Single crack and every break. So we're going to get into the nightmare sequence real fast here. Diana, what were your thoughts on that? First of all, did you understand it? Did you feel like that was explained enough?
No. I think that they get back into it, but I honestly, during the whole movie, I was just kind of anticipating when Leto was going to come in because, we saw Snyder released the images of him reprising his role as Joker. So I'm like, okay, when is this going to happen?
Yeah.
And then we finally get it at the end, and he did amazing. I liked how they kind of paid homage to Heath Ledger's Joker, but a little bit more updated. So I thought that was great. Besides, I don't know, I just thought it looked way better than the gangster look that he had in Suicide Squad. But just the way that he spoke, it was very Joker. I think that's the kind of Joker that we as fans wanted to see instead of the gangster.
Yeah, but I don't think that Joker was actually retconned. I think we're seeing him in a moment where, he's part of this apocalyptic situation. He probably was the gangster Joker from Suicide Squad, but he's weathered and he's different.
Adapt.
You know what I mean? He had to adapt, and his style changed too and whatnot. If I'm not mistaken, I tried to, pause it a couple times, but I kind of felt like his teeth were missing.
I saw that. It looked like they were either like rotting out or that they were missing. And
obviously, like, okay, so when the Suicide Squad came out, the thing I loved about the grill was that it would make sense. If Batman is just punching you in the mouth senselessly, you're going to lose all your teeth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think maybe he was toothless in this apocalyptic world, which would be wild, because he's a Joker. He's all about smiling and laughing and stuff. And, he doesn't have any fronts because, they just got, just smashed out of his mouth, 10, 15 years ago. And he doesn't have that grill anymore.
Yeah.
I would have to look again, but I'm pretty sure he had some teeth missing when he was speaking. But yeah, I agree with you. His look was definitely better.
And the thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about the most was what happened to Harley Quinn.
Yes.
Because Batman was saying how she died in his arms and she was begging him to kill the Joker slowly and painfully as possible. What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Okay, so that was one of my favorite lines in the movie. I think the whole point of that particular conversation which I was so happy to see, you know, for the most part, that people actually, you know, I mean, in Suicide Squad, Jared Leto as Joker basically got like 10 minutes of screen time, right?
Yeah, barely.
And here he gets like 5, right? But it's so compelling, you know, just what he's doing. You know, I'm seeing a lot of redemption for him too, which is great. Because, you know, now people are actually seeing for the first time that this dynamic of a Bruce Wayne, you know, played by Ben Affleck, and a Jared Leto Joker could definitely work. You know, but he says to him something along the lines of, you know, you sent a boy wonder to do a man's job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what he was talking about was Jason Todd. And Jason Todd was one of the Robins in, you know, Bruce Wayne's care. And he went to go stop the Joker on his own. And in the comics, there was actually Jason Todd was like kind of like a horrible Robin. Like people didn't like him because, you know, he kind of had an attitude problem and stuff. That DC actually put out like this, like, I think it was like an 800 number or something. And, you know, fans got to vote on whether or not he survived or, you know, Joker was going to kill him. So everybody was just like down with Jason Todd. Absolutely hate the guy. So this kid like literally got beat to death with a crowbar by the Joker. And, you know, I guess in the Snyder cut, if you go back to Batman v Superman, there's a suit that, you know, Ben Affleck has in the Batcave, and it says "Joke's on you, Batman." So I think that was Robin's suit. So he actually started tagging it and stuff after he, you know, basically beat this kid to death. You know, so that's what he's talking about. And he says something along the lines of, you know, it's funny you mentioned people dying in my arms. It's like Harley Quinn when she was bleeding and dying. She begged me to kill you, and believe me, I will fucking kill you. Like, that was
I know.
That's what he said, and he said it.
Favorite lines of the movie, because you can tell he hated him. He took away his sidekick, and then he tortured all these people, and he made his life hell for so long. But I don't think that they can live without each other, like what they mentioned in the comics multiple times. So,
well, let me see what you guys think about this, because, you know, like, we're all talking about, you know, we want the Snyderverse to continue, obviously, after this cut. And I think that, you know, echoes a lot louder. I think that was something I mentioned in the last episode. Like, this is the time where fans will be heard, hopefully, by the studios. But, you know, there are some, you know, like really like deep things that Zack wanted to do that were all already like the storyboards are basically out there, like the sequel to Justice League, and then the third, you know, movie that he wanted to make. And it has to do with the fact that that Bruce and Lois actually had grief sex with each other, and the child, the force majeure, I don't know if you saw the pregnancy test in Lois's you know, her drawer or whatever. I think Bruce even says at the end of the movie, he says, "Congratulations." So obviously she's pregnant, but the way Zack wanted to play it was that was Bruce Wayne's kid.
That would be interesting. I would actually like to see that, because that would cause a whole bunch of problems. Whole bunch.
But that would be the thing that makes Batman so devoted to stop this whole thing with Darkseid. You know what I mean? Because to a certain degree, he does have, you know, sort of his own love for Lois. And, you know, kind of like in The Walking Dead, like a Walking Dead situation with Rick and Shane, you know, Superman was just basically going to be like, you know what, I love you, Lois, and I don't care, and I want to be the father of this child, you know, like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, to a certain degree, I can understand how DC and Warner Brothers were like, no, are you? No, what? You want to do what? No way. You know, and you know, like, honestly, like, I don't know, that's a little too it's a little too adult for me, I think. You know, like,
I'm all for the chaos that it would ensue. I love when they throw a wrench in there and it just kind of like implodes everything. So I don't know, maybe.
But you know, like, as you saw in the scene where Cyborg was, you know, looking in the mother boxes for the first time before they resurrected Clark, you know, you see, you know, you see Diana on a pyre, you know, with the River Styx coins on her eyes, and like Darkseid just stabbing like Aquaman with his own with his own trident, and using Omega beams to like just destroy Atlantis.
So brutal.
Like that was all supposed to come into play. And
Mhm.
that's, of course, when, I mean, I'm sure it's probably a little bit of a sting for quite a few people to see her in this movie, but, you got to remember, like this is a movie that came out 4 years ago. But that's why, Mara was like, I'm going to stab this into his heart, because,
Yeah.
Of what he did to Arthur or whatever. Or, excuse me, stab this into his heart, because now she's British for some reason.
I didn't like her accent. Yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere, and it wasn't that great. And I don't have super great feelings for her as a whole, obviously, as a lot of people do. But I appreciated her character for what it was at the time and for what she needed to contribute, just as the character.
Well, the thing is, like when she did Aquaman, like there was no British accent, and like her hair color was like, basically like this like fire red, magenta, you know what I mean?
I did not like it. It was very Party City red. It was just flaming red. I'm like, you could throw some highlights or low lights in there, just tone it down just a little bit. I liked her hair more for this. I wish it would have been maybe a little bit more red, but definitely not this red, which is what it was.
Right. Well, like she does live in the ocean, so obviously she'd be like combing her hair with a fork or whatever. I'm an uncultured swine. I don't know what the real fork is called, like from The Little Mermaid, but
Dinglehopper. That's what it's called. Yeah, that was one of my favorite movies growing up. I got you.
Oh man. So I guess the best question to end off is after seeing this film, I mean honestly, like you had your problems with the Sith and whatever. Honestly, I call this a triumph, and it's masterful in so many ways. I mean, but I was there for the 2017 version. I've seen that a bunch of times, and of course, being a fan of Zack and all this stuff, like like honestly, it feels like if Zack was to end his career after dropping this, like it would be the greatest thing he'd ever done. Right.
Big success story.
But he's got he's got Army of the Dead coming up, and he's got his hand in a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know what I mean? It's not like, like this is the end of Zack Snyder. It's not, not even close.
Right.
But like how would you rate it? Not like from like, A to whatever, but like
give it a 1 out of 10. I mean, even going corny like that, I would give it a 10 out of 10. I didn't know what to expect going into it. I was curious to see how much of the 2017 version they brought into this, and how much more they could elaborate to make it more of an in-depth story. And it did need to be longer, because there was just so much that was chopped out of it that needed to be told for you to really get a grasp on who these characters are, how far they've truly come. And how it was a struggle to get them all together as a team. That was the one thing that I liked, that they really showed that the process of just trying to like rein everybody in from all these different directions. It was 100% a 10 for me.
Yeah. So how would you rate your experience? The 4 hours that you spent of your life watching this movie. What was your rating?
I would give it maybe a 9 out of 10. Like, I wasn't as attached to the characters as I am to, like, let's say
Marvel.
Yeah. But I thought that they did a really good job at putting music where it was lacking in the first movie. They did a great job expanding on the characters' backstories. The cinematography was beautiful. The special effects had improved a lot since the original movie.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so glad that it exists in our, in our world. And I, like I said, like even if it's something that you didn't care for, or you're just a Marvel fan, you're just like, you know what, don't care about DC, don't like that, moody, whatever stuff. That's the other thing about this movie as well, too, is that, like there's obviously a lot of grim moments, but it was pretty light too. You know what I mean? Like there was a good balance, I think.
It wasn't overly emo, wasn't overly depressing. It was sad at the right times when it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it wasn't like that episode of Teen Titans Go where it's like, let's get really serious, and then like
no, yeah, it was what it needed to be, for sure.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience, and like I said, I've seen it quite a few times already. Because I've been waiting 5 years for this thing. Do you think you guys would ever sit down and watch this again?
I'm gonna have to. I'm pretty sure I missed a lot of stuff. I mean, just it being 4 hours, you look away for 2 seconds and a bunch of stuff happens. So yeah, I'm gonna go back and watch it at least a couple times just to make sure I didn't miss anything important.
Mm-hmm.
But I would definitely rewatch it even if I wasn't doing that. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the show, guys. If you guys have not seen the 4-hour opus, the Snyder Cut, highly recommend you go and do that. And watch the rest of Zack's work. Watch the Ultimate Edition of Batman versus Superman. It is absolutely wonderful, and like that in itself is like 3 hours long. Zack is a very long-winded guy when it comes to storytelling and visuals. It's just just the way
he really wants to get that meat in there. He wants to make sure that you appreciate the characters for what they are and you really get to see them.
But I've always loved Zack's work, and even something like it seems like a lot of Zack's work is hated. Like Sucker Punch, for example. I love Sucker Punch.
That's one of my favorite movies. Like I've watched that. I can't even count how many times.
It's just so chill. You know what I mean? Like it's just so you don't really have to think about it too much, and like you could literally put on your own soundtrack and just chill and watch like all the beautiful visuals and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's like a really, really awesome music video for the most part. Yeah. But if you're really paying attention, it's actually a really cool story. It really is. The fact that this, these girls, need to get these, these things, like this, like the keys to, to get out of this asylum or whatever. Yeah. And I thought everybody did a great job, man. Oscar Isaacs is incredible in that movie. Emily Browning.
Yes, yeah. I love her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great movie. But yeah, that's the one thing about Zack. Zack just has this thing where, if you're a fan, you stand by him wholeheartedly, like, like almost to the point where you're fighting. And then if you hate him, like you absolutely hate him. But there's one thing that I will end the show off with is that, first of all, it's wonderful to see this happen to a good person, because Zack, by all accounts, is a wonderful, wonderful guy. And really cares about the people he works with, the people around him, and like it's always good when good things happen to good people, and I mean, not for nothing, but like Zack Snyder himself is kind of like built like a DC superhero. That guy looks good for his age,
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that.
But yeah, he's like I said, by all accounts, he's a great guy, and just the torment that I'm certain he and his family went through. It's just such a triumph that he was able to work on this and have it kind of be cathartic, and of course, when his daughter's name comes up, and
I started crying.
Yeah,
like immediately.
And just like hearing Hallelujah at the end of the movie just works so well, simply because this was a gift to her.
Yeah, I think if fans look at it in any way, they
like, look what your father did. Like, I completed this for you.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Getting teared up again. No, I'm not gonna cry.
All right, guys. Well, that's the show. Please join us at our new home, which is the Comic Book Movie YouTube channel. And we'll see you next week. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.